When my mother-in-law called me a useless parasite, I stayed quiet. But when I left, I took everything they never knew I had. They say when you marry someone, you marry their whole family. I just didn't know I was walking into a battlefield with no armor. I'm Isabel Harris. I married David because I thought he was gentle, kind, and unlike the men I'd known before. And for a little while, he was. We were young, broke, but happy, or so I thought. Until I met his mother, Eleanor. From the moment she shook my hand, I knew. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hug was stiff, cold. At our wedding, she wore black. I thought maybe she was making a statement. Mourning the end of her son's single life, maybe? But looking back, I realize she was mourning his freedom. Eleanor hated me. Not because I did anything wrong. No, I was polite, helpful, even deferential. But because I didn't come from money. Because I didn't have a fancy last name. Because I worked in a cafe and tutored high school kids on the side. In her eyes, that made me nothing. It started slowly. She'd re-season my food after I cooked it. She once accidentally donated a blouse I just bought, saying it looked cheap. Every time I laughed at the dinner table, she'd flinch like I was being too loud. David noticed. I know he did, but he always made excuses. That's just how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. She'll come around, but she didn't. One morning, I was setting the breakfast table. Eleanor was sitting in her robe, flipping through a magazine like some aging queen on a throne she never earned. David scrolled on his phone, sipping coffee. I placed a plate in front of him. That's when she struck. She looked up from her magazine, stared at me like I was something stuck to her shoe, and said, flatly, like it was just a fact, "You're just a useless housemaid pretending to be a wife." I froze. My hands trembled. I felt like the room had collapsed in on itself. And David, he said nothing, just kept chewing, toast crumbs on his lips, didn't even look at me. I smiled, numb, walked calmly to the bathroom, shut the door, and collapsed. The sobs came hard and fast, not just from the insult, but from the silence. From the betrayal that doesn't come from strangers, but from the person who's supposed to protect you. I sank to the floor, gasping. But then, I looked up. There was a mirror across from me, and in it, I saw a woman. Not weak, not broken, just underestimated. I stood up, wiped my face, and said it aloud, soft but certain. One day, I'll make her regret every word. And that day, oh, it came. She said I was useless, but useless women don't hold up entire households behind the scenes. The truth is, I kept that family alive. While Eleanor sat on her pristine white sofa judging my nail polish, while David studied late and bragged about how hard med school is, I was out there, working, grinding. Every morning at 6 a.m., I put on a cheap apron and poured lattes for executives who never looked me in the eye. After lunch, I'd rush across town to tutor teenagers whose parents never said thank you. Then I'd come home, cook dinner, and listen to Eleanor tell David how proud she was of him for providing for me. What they didn't know is that I was the provider. David didn't work a single hour through med school. I paid the rent, I paid the bills, I stretched every dollar like it was a lifeline, cut coupons, cooked from scratch, skipped meals just so David could eat a proper one. Before his exams, I gave up everything for him. I had dreams, too. Grad school, a research position, financial independence. But David said, "Babe, let's focus on one dream at a time. Let mine come first." And like a fool in love, I said yes. It wasn't even the sacrifice that stung. It was how invisible it all became, because when we finally bought our first home, a small fixer-upper with ugly carpet and leaky faucets, we put it under David's name. Not because he paid for it, but because his credit was better. Mine had been wrecked by my student loans I never got to use. The car, his name, the insurance, his name. Even our bank account, the one we called ours, was only joint. On paper, 80% of that money came from me. Every paycheck I earned went in there. But David, he never told his mother. Not once did he say, "Actually, Mom, Isabel paid for that. Isabel keeps us afloat. Isabel is the reason I get to chase my dream." No. He let her believe I was freeloading. He let her insult me with her wine in hand and her smug little smirk. So I stopped waiting to be seen. I stopped waiting to be rescued or thanked or even acknowledged, and I started building something no one could take credit for but me. At night, after David went to bed and Eleanor turned off her light, I stayed up. I opened my laptop. And I started something small. At first, it was tutoring online, then budget coaching. Then I got into personal finance forums, offering help. People started following me, referring me. I helped a single mom save her house. I helped a college student pay off debt. And I realized I was good at this. Really. Good. I created PDFs, spreadsheets, video lessons. I charged small fees, $20 here, $50 there. I reinvested it. And slowly, my side hustle turned into something more. Not just income, power. They thought I was quiet. They thought I was passive. But behind that silence, I was dangerous. Because while they saw a girl folding laundry, what they didn't see was a woman building an escape plan. And every day with every dollar I made, I was getting closer to my exit. They say every woman has a breaking point. Mine came with a wine glass and a room full of people who thought I'd never fight back. It was Eleanor's idea, the family dinner. One of those insufferable nights she lived for. White linen, napkins, overpriced wine, fake laughter echoing through a house I paid for but didn't own. She invited everyone, David's cousins, his uncles, even his smug older sister Vanessa, who once asked me if I knew how to pronounce charcuterie. I played my role as always, set the table, roasted the chicken, lit the candles, smiled, but inside, I was boiling, because I had just found out that morning, through a casual comment David made while brushing his teeth, that they were planning to put the house in Eleanor's name, not sell it. Not move, just protect it for the family, he said. You know, in case anything ever happened between us. I didn't cry, didn't scream, I just nodded and made a decision. That night, at the table, after dessert, Eleanor stood up with her wine glass, her face glowing like she'd just won something. "To our future," she said, raising her glass. "One without burdens." She looked directly at me when she said it, like I wasn't even there, like I was just air, furniture, disposable. The room laughed, not loudly, politely, the way rich people laugh when they know they're being cruel, but don't want it to look like it. I didn't laugh. I stood up, lifted my glass, and very calmly, very clearly, said, "Don't worry, Eleanor. I'll remove myself from your future." Then I sat the glass down, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door. That was the last time I ever played house in that house. I didn't pack much, just what mattered. My laptop, a few changes of clothes, a box of files I kept hidden behind. Old winter coats. But before I walked out, I sat down at my desk one last time. I opened our joint account. You see, while Eleanor was busy counting David's future salary, and David was busy letting her run his spine through a paper shredder, I had been busy too. For 4 years, I'd worked, saved, invested, built something in the background that no one saw coming. That joint account had $180,000 in it, and I knew the numbers down to the penny, because 80% of it came from me. Tutoring, coaching, digital downloads, budget guides, investments, referral programs. Every hustle you can imagine, I did it. I checked the balance. Then I took a deep breath and transferred it, all of it, to my new business account, under my name, under my LLC. I didn't feel guilty, not for a second. This wasn't revenge. It was reimbursement. When the transaction cleared, I looked at what I left behind. $2.34. Poetic, really. I shut the laptop, zipped my bag, and walked out of the house I paid for. Without saying a word, David texted me an hour later. "Where are you? Why is the account empty? We need to talk." I didn't reply, because I knew, in that moment, I had finally become the woman Eleanor never saw coming. The useless housemaid had just disappeared and taken their entire future with her. When I walked away from that house, I didn't just leave them behind. I left behind the version of me they thought would never fight back, and in her place, I built a storm. After I drained the account and left, I didn't go to a hotel or a friend's place. I went to a tiny studio apartment downtown. One room, a mattress on the floor, no couch, no TV, just my laptop, my files, and silence. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't scared. I was free. I set up my folding table, opened my laptop, and logged into the account I had just transferred the money into. My account. No one else's name on it. No one watching over my shoulder. No more pretending. That night, while the city hummed outside and someone upstairs blasted bad music, I launched the first official website of my business, Savvy and Seen, financial coaching for women who do it all. Because I'd had enough of being invisible. I turned every lesson I'd learned, every spreadsheet I made to survive, every budgeting strategy that kept food on our table, into digital products. I offered one-on-one sessions, built a newsletter, and taught women how to negotiate, invest, and say no with their full chest. It started slow. A few clients, a few dollars. But then, it caught fire. My story, the anonymous version, got picked. Up by a women's finance blog, then a podcast, then another. My inbox exploded. People wanted advice, help, strategy, and I gave it. Not just with kindness, but with precision. Ruthless, brilliant precision. Because while Eleanor was clinking wine glasses and David was crying over a failed Step 2 exam, I was building an empire in silence. Within 9 months, I'd tripled the money I took. I reinvested, built an LLC, hired a virtual assistant, and then the speaking invites came. The first time I stood in front of a crowd, all women, I nearly cried. Not because I was nervous, but because I was seen. For the first time in years, I was seen. And then, they came crawling back. It started with an email from David. The subject line was, "Can we talk?" He had failed the exam. Twice. The house, my house, had been foreclosed. Eleanor had medical bills and nowhere to go. He said, "I know. You're doing well now. Maybe we can figure something out." No apology, no remorse, just desperation. I didn't respond, because by then I had already been invited to headline the Women's Financial Freedom Summit in New York. 1,000 women in the audience. Journalists, cameras, lights. I stepped onto that stage in a cream power. Suit and heels that Eleanor once said were too much for someone like me. I spoke about reclaiming value, about financial abuse in marriages, about building in silence when no one is clapping. The crowd clapped anyway. Standing ovation. But then, I saw her, Eleanor, in the back of the crowd, hair duller, face thinner. She looked small. After my talk, as I was answering questions, she approached, like a shadow slipping through the crowd. She waited until everyone cleared, then said, barely above a whisper, "We were wrong about you, Isabel. I was wrong. Please help us," her voice cracked. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I paused. Not because I was unsure of what to say, but because I wanted the moment to sink in. For me. Then I turned to the mic. The cameras were still rolling. I said, "This woman once told me I was a useless housemaid pretending to be a wife. Now she wants my money." Gasps, laughter, whispers. I looked her dead in the eye and added, "I'm not useless. I was just underestimated." Eleanor stood there, blinking, frozen in place, like her pride wouldn't let her walk away until the last drop of dignity had evaporated. Then she turned and left, shoulders hunched, defeated. That clip went viral. 2 million views in 3 days. Useless no more became a trending hashtag. And Eleanor? She became a cautionary tale. They underestimated me. Because I was quiet. because I cooked and cleaned, because I put someone else's dreams before my own. But while they were laughing behind my back, I was building a brand. I thought I'd walked away for good. But Eleanor wasn't done. No, she was just getting desperate. It started with a thick envelope shoved through my mail slot. Inside, court papers, Eleanor had filed a lawsuit against me. She claimed I'd stolen marital assets, that I'd emptied the account without consent, that I manipulated her son and caused her emotional trauma. She even attached fake financial statements, forged numbers that made it look like David had contributed everything. They were clumsy, sloppy, but dangerous enough that the court accepted it for review. At first I was stunned, but then I laughed, because Eleanor never understood something very simple. I keep receipts, literal ones. I had every email I ever sent David about our bills. Screenshots of our text conversations where he thanked me for covering rent, for buying groceries, for paying off his tuition balance. I had bank statements, tax returns, even photos of the checkbooks, with my signature in every single one. So, I didn't panic. I prepared. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse in a fitted navy suit and heels that echoed like thunder across the marble floor. Eleanor sat at the front of the courtroom, pale, trembling, holding a tissue like a prop in some off-Broadway tragedy. David wouldn't even look at me. Their lawyer fumbled through his opening statement, painting me as an opportunist who abandoned her marital duties and absconded with family wealth. But when my lawyer stood up, it was over in minutes. Exhibit A, emails with payment breakdowns. Exhibit B, bank statements showing deposits from my business. Exhibit C, a recorded phone call. Eleanor's voice saying, "You're lucky, David. Lets you stay in his house," while the mortgage was being paid from my account. And finally, text messages from David. One of them read, "Thanks for covering the loan again. I don't deserve you." The judge took one look at the evidence and said, "Case dismissed, and I suggest you think carefully before you file another frivolous suit." Then, the twist. The judge fined them for fraud. Eleanor gasped. David turned, red, and I just stood, collected my papers, straightened my jacket, and walked out. In heels and sunglasses, David followed me out into the hallway. Isabel, wait, I didn't. I didn't need to turn around, didn't need closure, didn't need an apology he didn't mean. I just kept walking and smiled, because that moment, that was freedom. That week, a clip from my keynote resurfaced online, the one where I exposed Eleanor in front of an entire crowd. This time, it went viral on a global scale. News outlets picked it up. Women's groups reposted it. My inbox overflowed with messages. "You're a legend. You gave me courage. Thank you for standing up." One headline called me, "The woman who took the money and took her. Power back." And suddenly, I wasn't just a name anymore. I was a symbol. Because you can insult a woman, you can underestimate her, but you cannot break a woman who builds herself. The funny thing about peace is that it doesn't come loud. It comes quiet. After the wreckage, after the fire, after you've burned every bridge that was never safe to cross in the first place. Now I live by the ocean, a little cottage tucked along the cliffs where the wind smells like salt and freedom. No one raises their voice here. No one tells me I'm too much or not enough. No one calls me a burden. I wake up to the sound of waves, not judgment. I drink coffee without rushing to clean up someone else's mess. And I run my company, a global network of women learning how to say yes to themselves and no to anyone who tries to dim their light. I mentor women who once believed they had to shrink to be loved. I teach them that financial power isn't just about money. It's about knowing your worth and never putting your name second. Not for your husband, not for your mother-in-law, not for anyone. David and Eleanor? I heard they moved in together, not out of love, but survival. He's a man without a license. She's a woman without control, and both of them without me. Sometimes I walk along the shore at sunset, toes in the sand, a glass of wine in hand, and I remember that day, the breakfast table, the insult, the silence that followed, and I smile. Because in the end, she said I was useless, but I turned every insult into interest. And now, I live off the dividends of their disrespect.